What is up, guys? It is Joe. We're back. We're talking all about the Cats, specifically K-State basketball, as we jump into things here today. This was going to be kind of a my thoughts situation on certain things happening in Kansas State basketball. And if you saw the title, if you saw the thumbnail, I don't know how to describe it. And I'll try to quantify it in this video, and I'll explain why as I keep going through this. But this year, Kansas State basketball feels different. Something about this team feels different, and I cannot wait to talk you through my thoughts. But before I do, let me tell you this. If you like the channel, if you like K-State basketball, K-State football, be sure and subscribe. It helps me out immensely as we continue to grow this channel throughout the season. I hope you're all enjoying your off week from Kansas State football. I'll probably have a video discussing the Cats, specifically on the football field here in a couple of days. If not, keep on rolling until next week versus Colorado, and I'll have that post-game thoughts video for you. But I want to start off here. This year truly feels different, and you can chalk that up to a ton of different things. What I'm basing this on specifically, and I'll relate this as we go through, is if you're like me, you've watched a lot of the player interviews. They've had a couple of different player breakout interviews, whether that be Doug McDaniel and David Gasson, or you'd have Brendan Hazen and Max Jones. A couple days ago, they had Moby Ike Garuka and they had Ugana Onyenso, and to say that the clips were viral is probably an understatement at this point, because the dudes were straight comedy. They were awesome dudes, enjoyable dudes. Like, I don't know that I've watched a press conference and just had a smile on my face the entire time like that. They were funny dudes, man. I was cracking up with the back and forth stuff about how Moby's a fake Nigerian, or how Ugo has so many different things going on. He wasn't paying attention to the mic, then locks in when Kellis asks him a question or whatever the case was. There was just a lot of enjoyable things to like about in that interview. And I got to tell you the truth, this isn't a shot at those guys, but I don't know if I remember seeing that last season before the season started. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. The team misses the NCAA tournament, and there's a huge caveat to that. I'll talk about that more in a sec. But I don't know if I remember seeing so many fun, laughable, enjoyable clips. Like, Tyler Perry had a big personality. That was pretty much about it. Art was a quiet guy. Cam was a quiet guy. There's a couple of guys that had big personalities, but more or less, it was kind of a quiet locker room as a whole, I felt like. That doesn't feel like that's going to be the case this year. And even dating back to the Elite Eight team, like, Keys had a big personality. Keontae had a big personality. You had a ton of different guys. Desi Sills was a glue guy. There's a lot of fun and enjoyment in that locker room that I think maybe somewhere along the way got lost, and I think a lot of that could be chalked up probably to losing Naquan Tomlin, because Quan had a huge personality. Let's be honest about that up front. And that also does chalk things up to be a little bit different from last year to this year, but this team feels like they gel so much more already, and that's rebuilding from a point that was 3 players less than you had in Tang's sophomore season, so to speak. You obviously had to rebuild the team basically from scratch your first year with you had Marquise Noel staying behind, you had Ish Massoud staying behind, and then the entire rest of the roster you had to build from scratch. The season after that, you had 5 or 6 able-bodied dudes ready for Big 12 basketball, and you built about half the team through the portal. This year was kind of like the first year where you had David Gasson, Taj, and Buddy returning. We had 3 dudes instead of 2, but it still was a similar aspect of, hey, we got to build through the portal. And one of the questions asked to Ugo was, what is the disadvantage of having all these guys on the same team? And him and Moby both answered it candidly, saying, like, okay, I get that there's a lot of, like, you have to get to know these people. I didn't know these people. And that's kind of what stemmed some of the Nigerian comments about how Ugo was stoked to have more Nigerians on the team. But the funny part is that these dudes both seemed like they'd known each other for a decade plus. Like, they love each other. They cherish each other. Like, it was really cool to see that relationship. And I don't think you see that everywhere. You don't get to see that everywhere you go. And having that opportunity with guys that just got there maybe, you know, whatever the case is, 3 or 4 months ago through the portal, it's really, really cool to see that. And I don't know that I remembered seeing that the previous season. So I want to keep tying in on this thread of this team feels different. And to look at that, let's analyze the side-by-side view here. I'm just going to kind of talk you through it because my editing skills, I don't want to try to attempt that and ruin the video experience for you guys here. But I want to talk to you about the starting 5 last year to now versus some of the complementary pieces from last year's squad to now. And keep in mind, there's a huge caveat to both these things. The first caveat being, obviously, the team last season would have been way different had you kept Naquan Tomlin on the team. He was supposed to be your best player. Absolutely was. Instead, you know, you lose him to Memphis, and then it becomes the three-headed monster of TP, Cam Carter, Arthur Kaluma, and you just lost a lot. You lost Quez Glover to injury. You lost a lot of guys here and there. So last year's team never really got out of the starting blocks the same way they anticipated it to. This year's team is different. And the caveat for our team this year is that we technically don't know the starters yet or who the complementary pieces are. You can kind of figure it out if you take some shots or throw some spaghetti noodles at the wall and see if they stick. I'm going to openly say it this way. I don't think this may be the case. I know Coach Tang will change up the lineup every other week if something feels stagnant, but my guess is that we'll probably see consistently, the lineup that we'll see most consistently, in my mind, it's going to be Doug McDaniel, David Castillo. I think he's going to be on the court a lot. That's the main variable. Coleman Hawkins at the 3, Chor at the 4, and then some combination of Ugo or David Gasson at the 5. I think it'll probably be Ugo in an effort to best preserve David Gasson's minutes because He had a lot of wear and tear physically last season. I don't know if you need him to be a starter to have the same impact he had. This is a situation where you can limit David Gasson's minutes with a dude that is a superstar defensively. He's going to be a beast offensively, I think. It's going to take a little bit of time, but Ugonna Onyenso is a perfect dude to start on the court, get some minutes here and there, and split with David Gasson. Could those things be completely wrong? Absolutely. I don't know the starting five like the back of my hand. I don't want to make it sound that way. But as of right now, I've got Doug McDaniel, David Castillo, Coleman Hawkins, Chore, and then either Ugonna Onyenso or David Gasson. Last year's starters, you had this. Dade Ames at the 1, Tyler Perry at the 2, Cam Carter at the 3, Arthur Kaluma at the 4, and then some combination of Jarrell Colbert versus Will McNair at the 5. I will say Jarrell started the majority of the back half of games. When you go position to position, and this isn't a shot at the guys from last year because I love all those dudes and I appreciate them being at Kansas State, but you get a true freshman guard in Dade Ames who was a stud and I think is a really good basketball player. I don't know that it'll work out the same way at Virginia it will at Kansas State, just strictly because it's a weird adjustment from a Coach Tang team to a team that scores 51 points a game. There's not much pace there, and Dade is such a fast transition player. Not that I'm criticizing Dade for the choice, but it seemed a little bit of a weird fit. So you look at that. A true freshman Dade Ames last season versus Doug McDaniel, one of the most skilled dudes in the entire Big Ten. When he's on the court, he's one of the best players in the conference. Doug McDaniel's a huge, sizable upgrade at that position just from a veteran leadership spot, just from a guy coming in that's been around college basketball. That already is a huge thing. Then you look at your 2, and this is one where these are 2 very, very different players from an experience point. Tyler Perry would be an awesome player to have back. I do wish we had him for another season, but it's the way it goes, man. It's what happens. Tyler Perry at the 2 versus David Castillo at the 2. You could also kind of sub in Brendan Hausen, Max Jones, CJ Jones, whoever's going to be at that 2-3 spot. There's going to be a couple of different dudes, but you get TP, who was a lights-out shooter. Obviously, he was streaky at times, but this is your 5-star. This is your kid that comes in and is a dude that says, hey, I may be a true freshman. Watch the impact I can have. This is a dude that could be a Big 12 freshman of the year already. That's the type of player David Castillo can have, so that's a huge aspect. It's just a different roster, sideline to sideline. Your 3 was Cam Carter, who I was a Cam Carter guy. I know that he got a lot of heat down the stretch for turnover issues and, lack of decision-making skills, whatever the case was. I'm still a Cam Carter guy. I loved Cam Carter. He improved beyond what I expected him to coming into the season. Jumping from 5 or 6 points a game to 15 points a game is a huge deal. Coach Tang always has 1 or 2 of those guys that jump out of the gym and say, okay, remember me. Don't forget about me. I'm a good enough player. Look at the jump I took. The difference is, how do you compare Coleman Hawkins to Cam Carter? These are 2 very, very different players for very, very different reasons. The length difference. Cam was, 6'3"? Now you get Coleman Hawkins, who's 6'10", who's played the 4 and 5 at Illinois. That's a completely different roster construction. You compare Arthur Kaluma to a Chore, who, honestly, they're more similar than if you think about it, they're similar-ish players. A Chore definitely is a better outside shooter, can be better in transition. Art is a dude that absolutely has NBA ceiling. It's just the fact of getting him to bring it out of him consistently. I don't know that we ever got to that opportunity, but you look at that team and you needed the 3-head monster of TP, Cam Carter, and Arthur Kaluma. All 3 of them had to be on to beat any team in the nation, and they could. The issue was most nights it was maybe 2 of those guys were on. Most nights it was 1 of those guys were on. And the other 2 were figuring it out as they go. Then you look at the 5, and it's Jarrell Colbert versus Ugo. The difference is, you wanted Jarrell Colbert to be Ugonna Onyenso last season. That's kind of the impact of what you want. Be a high-energy guy, block shots, compete at the rim. You don't have to give us a double-double every night, but be up there competing every single time. Give us the energy, win that opening tip, and then play lockdown defense. I mean, there was really good stretches for Jarrell Colbert, and then there were some that looked really, really bad as well. Ugo feels like a big improvement as to what the staff wanted out of Jarrell Colbert last season. Complementary pieces, and I'll look down that list as well. Keep in mind that you lost a couple last season, but last season you had Dorian Finister, RJ Jones, Will McNair, Michaela Britch, Taj, and Quez Glover. Quez, who was done for the year, so kind of scratched Quez out there. Your complementary pieces this year, you've got Max Jones, CJ Jones, Brendan Hausen, Bay Fall, Buddy Rich, Taj, and Moby Ike Garuka. What I want to say with this, because it's not as simple to say this guy's better than this guy or this guy's better than this guy. That's not what I'm trying to do. The idea is you have so many more dudes that can touch the court if you're in a slump. If you're in a slump where it's like, dang, guys, we're not hitting shots from this guy, and this guy. Let's toss the 11th dude on our bench out there. He'll get out there and he could be a starter. That's the beauty of what you're seeing. Last season, you didn't have that consistently. You think about it, you probably had a rotation that was 7 deep max last season. You sometimes saw Dorian Finister. You'd very, very, very seldomly see Buddy Rich or RJ Jones, but you'd see Will McNair, you'd see Jarrell Colbert, and the 3 starter guys I talked about, as well as Dade Ames. So it's just one we had maybe a 6 or 7 man rotation. This year you could legitimately have a 10-man rotation. That's the type of ability this team has. And it's something that's not lost on me. So Coach Tang and the staff, I appreciate all the work you did in the portal. This feels like a really, really good spot to be trending towards. But man, it's an exciting time to be around Kansas State basketball. And there's more to talk about that. There's more recruiting stuff I'm going to talk about later this week. A new 5-star kid entering into the fold we'll talk about here. And then some other stuff happening with different guys making cut-down lists, different people visiting. There's a lot of good things happening at Kansas State basketball. We'll talk about that. To wrap up my thoughts on the interview piece with both Moby and Ugo, I thought the dudes are just good dudes, man. It's like these are guys that you want in your program. You want guys that are happy to be there, that are excited to be there. And I thought the best question was when, I apologize for not knowing the reporter, it could have been D. Scott, it could have been one of the Go Power Cat guys, one of the On 3 guys, could have been Kellis. I thought 100 different people it could have been. Whoever asked Ugo the question of, hey, how does it feel to be at Kansas State? Do you feel like you made the right choice? And without missing a beat, he's like, he like kind of looks at him like almost disrespecting. He's like, yeah, this is the perfect decision. This is where I want to be. I love my family. And he talked about it and he's like, I'm a guy that needs my family around me. That was the biggest thing where I started considering like, maybe basketball isn't for me because I can't do this without my family. The second he gets to Kansas State and he goes, have you seen the head coach here? Have you seen the team here? This is a family. That's the type of stuff. And it was like such an eye-opening moment to be like, these dudes really appreciate what it means to be a Wildcat, what it means to be at Kansas State. And you see everybody on the team has that. And it's so, so, so exciting. So that's something that I kind of took away from that, as well as like, those dudes are going to be fan favorites. I don't know if Moby redshirts this season, if he plays some, whatever the case is, but you got to love the ability from both dudes, the upside from both dudes, and just the enjoyment from both of them. I think Ugo could definitely very easily be kind of my guy this season. I predicted that he's going to lead the Big 12 in blocks. I stand by that prediction. I think he's a superstar player, and I'm excited to see what happens there. One last thing, I guess, before I get out of here, just to talk about it. I thought another thing they both appreciated Coach Tang's involvement in the team. Like, he talked about it, and this is a dude that played for Coach John Calipari, saying Coach Tang's in everything, man. He's not just there to be like, all right, once a week he's out there, this is how we start practice, then he disappears and lets the assistant coaches handle it. Coach Tang is involved in every single point of the process. And I thought that was such a cool thing to see from a guy that's been to an elite basketball program. Obviously, K-State 2-0 against Kentucky both times we've played them in the last couple of seasons. But the important part is that you get a great program with great dudes. They consistently find that, and that's something you love to see about the recruiting process. So you'll figure out the basketball side. I think there's a lot of talent on this team. There's a lot of length on this team, and I'm excited to see what the upside looks. But folks, this season, this team looks different. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. I'll have a video here in a couple days talking some updates for the different recruiting stuff, but I appreciate all the support. Thanks for all checking out the videos each and every week as they come out. I will talk to you guys here soon. Enjoy the bye week. Go Cats.